Today on Energy Contact, so many of us spend our lives searching for more. We take our body to a doctor, our brain to school, our spirit to church, our emotions to a shrink, and then one day we wake up and wonder why we feel so torn apart. Today, we're on the threshold of something very different than that. We're on a journey to consciousness. And like all journeys, it begins with the very first step. So put your best foot forward because it's coming up right now on Energy Contact. Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series I'm presenting as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of seeing yourself and a new way of seeing the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making an energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego. There's no difference between mass and energy. We love to categorize and separate and dissect and sort of parcel these things out. But the more we look, the more we see there's just no difference. In fact, all that health and self-improvement that we're talking about happens when we do just the opposite of the separation process. It happens when we make an energetic contact, a contact between the physical world and the unseen one. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that. Let's bring up our slide. Everyone please know that I am not a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor, and this show is in no way a medical advice show. If you're looking for some medical advice, you're in the wrong place. Now, I might call myself an energy healer or a chakra healer, things like that, but state, federal, and local governments absolutely do not. There's important information on this slide. We're going to leave it up for a few minutes so that you can read it with all due awareness. And when you've got it down, if you will, please locate a pencil and paper. Here's why. At the end of the show, we're going to run some credits, and on those credits, there's going to be contact information for me. Well, I hope that you'll find some of the information on this show intriguing enough that you might want to contact me. In order to do that, you're going to need that contact information. And in order to get that, you're going to need a pencil and paper. There'll be plenty of time to jot that down if you've got your pencil and paper ready. All right, let's come back up here. Today's show is show number 1. It's the premiere episode of Energy Contact. It's the first of a long series. So welcome and congratulations, you're here on the ground floor. And we're going to go a lot of places too. I'm going to do my best to keep each show complete on a standalone basis, but these shows will build. They'll be sequential. I don't think you're going to need to catch every single show, but if you can pick up a few episodes of Energy Contact from time to time, I believe you'll get enough of a thread of continuity where you'll get a whole lot out of this show. And if you do that, I'll appreciate it. And on this show, I have co-hosts. I'm going to introduce those guys to you now. Let's get Slim on camera. This is my co-host Slim to Nuttin. Since we're doing a show about energy contact, we're going to investigate what energy contacts, hence the name, what it contacts in the physical self. And so we're going to need to understand energy. And this show is certainly about energy. But all that energy out there somewhere does us no good. It does us no good until we understand that thing that the energy contacts. My friend Slim here is to help us understand that physical thing that the energy contacts. And while we're at it, I should introduce my other friend here. This is Cool Chi Guy. Cool Chi Guy is an acupuncture model. Now, he's going to be a little more obscure and even a little bit more of a silent partner than Slim is on these shows. But he'll be here with us every show. Both Slim and Cool Chi Guy have in common that they represent different views of ourselves. So, I've got great co-hosts, and what's even better than that is I get all the cool speaking lines. All right, let's come back here. As we progress through this series, we'll discuss a number of things. We're going to discuss some things very physical, very hard science, and others much more esoteric and much more mystical. But even the mystical, we're going to present to you in very practical, very tangible, very understandable ways. We're going to discuss body and mind, mass and energy, health and healing, growth and self-improvement. We're going to talk about anatomy and physics from a very energetic, perhaps even a mystical perspective. Then we're going to turn it around and we're going to talk about mystical things, energetic things, auras, chakras, kundalini energy, things like that. But we're going to present them in very practical, very scientific ways. Why do we want to do this? Now, what's the point? So what? Well, so what? It's so we'll begin to understand ourselves, all of ourselves, from every side, every view, every angle. We're getting the big picture here. It's the panorama view. We don't want to just get that separated, disjoint, non-integrated stuff that you've been inundated with all your life. We're putting things together on this show. How can we get where we're going if we don't know where we are? Well, we're learning where we are, and when we do, that's going to empower us to change ourselves in positive ways, to change ourselves into the things we want to be, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, every way. The reason we look the way we look, act the way we act, think the way we think, and feel the way we feel is because we've built ourselves that way. We've built ourselves to our own specifications very precisely, very meticulously, and in some instances, we've done a pretty poor job of it. And so we waste so much time and effort doing the same old things over and over again. And then we sit back in awe and amazement as we get the same old results over and over again. People say, oh, I've gone on 100 diets. I've joined 100 gyms. Or maybe I've joined the same gym 100 times. After time number 96 or 97 or so, you think we'd see that it's not working? Some people say, oh my goodness, I've tried everything. I've tried hundreds of things. Well, they haven't. They've tried one thing hundreds of times. It might have been in a different wrapper, different packaging, but it's the same old thing. On Energy Contact, we are doing something different. We're presenting a new model, a brand new paradigm that's thousands and thousands of years old, in fact. So if you're tired of doing that same disempowering old thing, being the same, blindly accepting the same old stories, following the same old crowd, taking the same old pills, if you're looking to do new things in new ways, well, congratulations. You're in the right place. We're talking about real things, and anything real can be explained. There's a credibility problem that New Agey subjects and esoteric things have, and it's often well-deserved, because these are things that they're often shrouded in a lot of mystery and a little sanctimony to go with it, usually because the people who are talking about them don't really understand them themselves. But today's science, what we call science today, is just yesterday's mysticism. And today, what we're calling mystical even on this program, will just be dry high school science, the stuff that our great-great-grandchildren will probably be too bored to want to study in school. Look at Einstein. Once upon a time, he had the nerve, the gall to say that there's no difference between mass and energy. And you know what? People laughed at him. He was even ostracized for a while by his own scientific community. And they tried to prove him wrong, but in doing so, they realized he was right. And now, 100 years later, we hear that E equals MC squared business and we say, ho hum. Mysticism always obeys Einstein laws. Einstein's laws. In fact, a part of the problem we have with the mystical is that it is often presented in spooky ways by people that we'll call on the fringe somewhere. It's Sister Moonbeam, it's Brother Sprout Blossom. It's hard to describe this stereotype, but you know what I'm talking about. We're going to bring that down to earth because the subject matter itself is not spooky at all. It's as practical and tangible as Einstein himself. On Energy Contact, we are boldly going on a search for the gems of truth inside the raw ore of the mystical world. All right, so lots of things to do, but now's the time in the show where we're going to take just a moment to take a deep breath, close our eyes for a second, and we're going to take a little virtual journey, a journey in your mind's eye, a virtual field trip of sorts. I make a little fun of these what I'll call the mystical types, but I'm really one of them myself, I guess. And us mystical types, goodness, we love to visualize. And so what we're going to do now, and in fact about this point of every show, is we're going to take a few moments and we're going to look at some things that we can sort of see practical things and take that, abstract from that a little bit of analogy, a little bit of a lesson. So today we are going to go on a tour of a glass factory. First thing you notice as we walk in is all the raw material. There's just bumps and clumps and shards and piles of glass everywhere. A lot of broken glass. This company recycles, so they've got a lot of broken glass slabs and things all over the place. Cool. So we look at that and then we move forward and we see work. We start to see furnaces. We see a lot of work being done, heat and fire and blending and molding. We look inside the furnaces and we see white hot molten glass being forged and formed into something that we can drink out of, something that we can hang on a chandelier. And it's fascinating. It's a lot of work. On the way out, we see something different. There's a reject room. And in this reject room, there's sort of a balcony hanging over it, and down beneath is a bunch more broken glass. And there's a bunch of people, they're having fun in a destructive sort of way. They're just sitting up there throwing the reject pieces of glass down, the off-spec stuff, and they're busting it up with hammers and throwing things against the walls and the floors and stuff. And about this time, one of the guys comes up and hands you a few of these pieces. And he says, "Go ahead, you'll like it." And so you do. You just hang one over the edge, boom, it drops, shatters into 1,000 pieces. You drop a few more. And about that time, you realize something. You realize something very important. Things fall apart all by themselves. It doesn't take any effort at all, really, to make things fall apart. Maybe a little gravity. That's all. Things don't fall together. You can put things together, but that takes work. That's what they were doing over there, and it takes a lot of work. Things fall apart all by themselves. In fact, you can try that experiment at home. You can take a drinking glass out of your kitchen cabinet, go out to the sidewalk and throw it down on the pavement, and you'll get thousands of pieces every time. But try as you may, you cannot take those thousands of pieces and throw them down and get a drinking glass. I live in Venice. And in Venice, they do that experiment with beer bottles a lot. Anyway, things fall apart all by themselves. That's the law of entropy. It's Isaac Newton's second law of thermodynamics, in fact. Hold that thought. We're going to take that into some stories today. And so today, as we do that, we're going to tell a lot of stories. Really, I'm just downloading as much setup to you as I can, as fast as I can. And so some of the places we'll take this, some of the explanations you'll hear from it might seem a little bit simplistic in the brief few minutes we have today. That's all the time we're going to have time for. But also, if I told you everything today, you wouldn't have a reason to tune into the next show and the next one. I want to keep you coming back because over the next couple hundred shows or so, we're going to explain everything in excruciating detail. But don't let me off the hook. Because if there's anything you want to have a comment about or a question, anything like that, and you don't feel like waiting till show number 89, Remember, those credits are rolling up at the end of the shows, and if you contact me, I'll get back with you. Oh, and one last thing before we move on. You might find that you don't agree with everything I say. Well, good. That means you can think for yourself, and that's a very healthy thing. I'm just submitting ideas for your approval. All right, but today we're talking about things falling down and falling apart, and we're going to try to see with that what we can do to make some things fall up and make some things fall together. The medical doctor sees you as a body only, void of energy and spirit. And so maybe you go to an energy healer, but that energy healer might see you as spirit and energy, but fails to consider the fact that you're flesh and blood, that you're just pipes and gears and muscles and nerves and cells, things like that. So that body without energy, it's just a corpse. That doctor is missing something. And energy without a body, that might be a number of cool things, but none of them are human. So that energy healer is missing something too. It's not the body at all. It's not the energy at all. It's the interface. It's that place where the energy contacts the physical self. How can all of these smart people be missing something so plain, so obvious? The body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego, they're all the same thing. We like to part ourselves out like a stolen Toyota at a chop shop. It's not going to take us where we want to go. Before we move on, let's harken back to that medical doctor for just a second. That medical doctor, he learned about living people by cutting up dead ones. I submit to you that there might be something in there that he was missing. Some force that keeps us alive. And so we know that those forces exist. We can't see them, but we know they're there. There are forces working from within us, pushing out, and then there's things on the outside pushing us back in. It's sort of a, if you inhale, you can feel yourself pushing out against the environment a little bit. When you exhale, you can feel that environment pushing back in a little bit, huh? Those are the forces. Those internal forces, they are really that thing that makes us something other than that corpse that we just talked about. Those are the forces that animate us. They keep us alive. We're going to look at those a lot over the next couple of shows. But today, we're just going to get a feel maybe for some of those things on the outside of us. Those environmental forces. The things that are pushing and pulling us around. And for now, we're going to boil them down into three rough categories. Energy, gravity, and entropy. Now remember, entropy might be a new word for some of you, but it's just our field trip. It's that drinking glass. All you need to know about entropy is that things fall apart, all by themselves. Okay, so energy is to mass what water is to ice. Well, more accurately, it's what steam is to ice. But for the sake of my next story, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it down to water and ice. Let's say that you go to your freezer one day and you see an ice cube tray in there and you don't really like the way those ice cubes look. So here's what you do. You reach in, you just take the ice cube tray out of the freezer and you put it down and sit it on a counter. You go away for a few hours and you come back and a miracle has happened. That ice isn't ice anymore. It's turned into water. So now what we do is very carefully pick that ice tray back up and put it back in the freezer again. Come back in a few hours again, and oh wonder of wonders, the water's not water anymore. It's turned back into ice. But you know what else? Something else is different. It's refrozen into a new shape, a different shape. Even though you didn't take one drop out and you didn't put one drop in, it appears differently. Is it a miracle? Yeah, you tell me. Now let's say you take that same ice cube tray out and sit it on the counter again. And this time you go away for a few hours. When you come back, it's water. And you reach in your cabinet and get out a drinking glass. I hope you got a few of them left in there, that you didn't take them out and smash them all on the sidewalk. What we're going to do now is we're going to take that ice cube tray and pour the contents of it into a drinking glass. And we want to be very careful not to spill one drop of out the side of the glass. And we want to be very careful to get every drop in there. Now we put that drinking glass full of water back in the freezer again, And miracles again. We come in back in a few hours, now that ice really has a different shape. How can that be, huh? It's the same molecule. You didn't change out one molecule, but it has a completely different shape. Well, that's how ice and water work. We know that, don't we? And it's how mass and energy work. For our case specifically, it's how mass and energy work in your body. So, you can change your body. You can change your body to your own specifications, just like that water and ice. I work with people, a lot of people. People, for example, who don't have cancer anymore. People who don't have arthritis anymore. Chronic fatigue syndromes, things like that. Vertebra problems. On the other end, I work with models and actors. People who just want to change their physical shape, their cosmetic appearance. But they don't want to go get liposucked and Botoxed and siliconed and all that. In between, there's all sorts of people. People who don't want to be on the Zoloft, sports injuries, accidents, you name it. But for my next story, I'm going to use my model and actor clients as the example. They will come to me and they won't like the way they look, or at least they won't like something about the way they look. And so they'll say to me, they'll say, why does this look like that? Why do I look the way I look? And I will tell them, it's because you have built yourself that way. It's because you have built yourself into exactly what they are. And you know what? They don't believe me at first. They never believe me. Just like I would imagine you might be having a little trouble believing me now. So I go on and I say, well, who do you want to blame? You want to blame God, your mother, genetics? Well, you can blame anybody or you can blame anything you like, but you're not going to get better doing that. Then they come back again and they say, yes, but Joseph, why would I build myself in a way that I don't like? Now, that is the question. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting to the heart of something. I can tell you why. It's because they, and you and I, did it without awareness. We built ourselves without awareness. Why? Because nobody told us. How could we know? Well, I'm telling you now. And I'm telling you that we can do something about it. We're going to see a lot about that. The fact is that genetics and environment, things like that, they play a big role in how you look and how you feel. We're going to see a bunch of that over the next few shows. But we don't want to cry about the things beyond our control because that is a waste of time and, well, energy. Let's take a look at the things we can control. And you're going to discover that it is vastly, immensely more than you ever thought. Gravity falls down. Entropy falls apart. Gravity and entropy are nature. It's the natural order of things. Nature wins. Gravity wins every time. Gravity never gets tired. Expecting anything different than that would be like expecting to toss a ball up in the air and have it not come back down. Remember the story of Isaac Newton under the apple tree? Isaac Newton, we spoke about him a little bit earlier. He's the guy that figured out and quantified how gravity works. Well, there's a story about him under an apple tree. It's really not a true story, it's a fable. It's sort of like Washington and the cherry tree. But we'll roll with it for now. So there he is sitting under the apple tree, and doink, an apple hits him in the head. And you know what he figures out? He figures out things fall down. Fascinating. And he was right. It's the nature of things. Things do fall down. You have a personal nature too. And if you take that and fight these universal laws of nature, you will lose. It does you no good to fight nature. You will lose. We can't successfully fight our nature, but we can change it. Most of us are doing exactly the opposite. We're respecting our nature. We're paying homage to the sovereignty of it. We're respecting our boundaries. And then we're trying to put it on a leash and train it like a trained animal. But it doesn't work. How many people do you know who ever just went on one diet once and it worked? We can't fight our nature. The only way to succeed is to change our nature and then cooperate with the new one. And that's pretty easy to do, you'll see. If we cooperate and align ourselves with gravity, we win too. And if we fight gravity, gravity hands us over to entropy, and we fall down, and we fall apart. So, what does all this have to do with energy? Well, everything. And you know what energy has to do with? Mass. That's what Einstein told us. What is mass? Well, it's this stuff right here. It's anything that you can see and touch, pick up, feel. And you know what? It's exactly the same as everything that you cannot see, cannot feel, cannot touch, cannot pick up. That's where things get a little more trippy, but stay with me. We still haven't left Einstein's physics yet. Mass is the same as energy. And mass and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. But they can flip-flop back into each other very easily. Just the same way that ice in your freezer can flip-flap into water. And if we went on with the experiment, into steam and back and forth. It's all the same. And that same energy that runs your toaster oven at home is the same energy that keeps Mars from bumping into Jupiter. And you know what else about energy? It is everywhere. It's ubiquitous. In my house, there's one manifestation of energy that I refer to as electricity. And I don't have to know a whole lot about that energy to make it work for me, huh? I've got a bunch of appliances in my house, and each of those items has an identical plug. On that plug is an identical cord. And I take that cord and I plug it into any one of a bunch of identical outlets. And I get a toaster that toasts and a stereo that plays music, lamps that light up, all sorts of things. But wait a minute, if it's the same stuff, why can't my computer heat the house? Huh? Why can't my stereo word process? Why can't I listen to music on my lamp? Well, it's because that same energy is experienced differently, depending on the machine that processes it. And that's important to know, because you and I are machines that process energy. Energy always moves mass, by the way. Ask anybody who's ever seen a bomb go off. So, let's take that back to the energy in my sockets at home, in my outlets. What if, instead of a plug, I take a table knife and put it into the outlet? Ha! Now I've got a new relationship with that energy in my house. Has that energy turned evil? No. It's just the way we relate to it. We are on the verge of discovering so much about ourselves. Your mass and your energy, you're going to learn about it. Your body, mind, spirit, emotion. That's what's coming up over the next 100-odd shows or so, and I hope I'll see you here. Until then, I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in Energy Contact. I'm gonna drive away.